name's John. Thanks for joining me today with the Razor Company. You might recognize me from my own channel, Stubble Meets Steel on YouTube. So I was asked to do a intro to gem razors, and if anybody knows my channel, you'll see that I did a really long 1-hour special all about gems. So if you like this video, check that out. It's got a lot more information. I wanted to try to keep this somewhat short and sweet, but this is one of the most common ones. This is what's called a 1912 because it's patented in 1912. They started making these in 1919, and they have a unique style head that opens up like this. And they also have a unique blade. And I know you're probably thinking, hey, that just looks like a paint scraper blade that I get at the hardware store. But if you look, it does say gem on it. And if you get a regular paint scraper blade and put them side by side, they are a little bit shorter dimensionally than one of these gem blades. And one of the big reasons you might be asking, well, why would anybody even want to mess with these, is because I find, at least personally, that these blades last double or more than that of what a double-edged blade lasts for me. I've gotten 10 plus shaves off of these, and I have a buddy with a really light beard that has an astonishing 40 plus shaves on one blade. So that's one reason. And what you want to look for is, if you get one of these used, there's these little tabs down in the front here that catch the blade. You want to make sure that those are there. I've heard stories sometimes that if they're really bad shape, you see how it sits on that like that? And some of these can be in really bad shape and the stops won't be there. So be cautious of that if you're looking. And there you go, now you're ready to shave. So the other thing to note is, for the most part, the shave angle is unique, as far as the cap is almost held parallel to your face and kind of just tilt off about, I don't know, 10 to 15 degrees or so, something like that. And you'll feel the blade engage like you would with any other razor, and you're going to basically be shaving like that. So it's more of a downward shearing cut, being that it's a single edge. So it's more somewhat of a cross between what a straight razor feels like and a double-edged blade feels like, because a double-edged blade is more engaging like this. So it's more of a scraping cut, versus this being a single edge is more of a shearing downward cut. So some argue that you'll get a longer lasting shave, or they just prefer it. So I do find that with some of these, I do get a longer lasting shave. If I go the next day, I'll find that while I still do need a shave, the stubble is not nearly as pronounced. So those are some of the reasons why you might want to check these out. A lot of people like retro vintage looking items like this, and you know, they're more unique looking than the vintage other offerings out there by Gillette and some others. So it is something that looks more unique, that's kind of brand specific. This video is going to be primarily about the gem brand ones. There's also Everready and Star that are basically the same thing, as well as Treat. But to keep things simple, I'm mostly going to be talking about gem, which started in 1898 here in the United States. So go ahead and stay tuned. I'm going to go ahead and get set up on a table and go through almost the whole lineup of these razors. I think you're going to enjoy it. All right, everyone, thanks for staying tuned. So I'm going to go ahead and break these down by which one I consider basically mild, medium, and then full aggressive. Now, there's several different variations of several of these razors, and I'm going to try to give that information without getting too complex and overly confusing anybody. So starting off, there is this one. And if you'll notice, these two are very similar in looks, but there's a few slight differences. If you look at the back cap here, what I mean is the back cap here, there's slightly different shape to it. You see how this one kind of steps down in? So these would be considered 1912 models because the patent on them was 1912. This one with the shorter back here and how it bends in, this would be considered a squat back 1912, and this would be considered the most mild of the lineup, okay? So we'll start there. That one is the most mild and least efficient in my opinion, extremely so. Moving right along, we have a 1958 push button. Why do they call it a push button? Because there's these sweet push buttons that open the top for you. You go ahead and load your blade, and look, push button to snap it shut again. This particular model comes in both chrome and gold. The handle is going to be black on both here. This ribbed plastic, I don't know if it's Bakelite or plastic, but they're both the same other than just the color. This one is extremely smooth and mild. If you have a light beard that's not super coarse, you'll probably like this one a lot. Moving along, I believe this came out in the 50s. This is called a Micromatic, and this is also called a flying tip bullet wing, or some of them have a guiding eye right here, a dot in the center. There's two different versions. They basically shave the same. This is a twist to open model. I would say this is about as smooth as the 1958, but a little bit more efficient. Not earth-shatteringly so, but a little bit more efficient. It has the shape of a bullet, so they call that the bullet tip, and it has this kind of tapered design, and if you'll notice, the bar here is closed, okay? It's not an open comb. Moving right along, we have the Gem G-Bar. These came out in 1955, and it has a little letter G right here. That's why they call it the G-Bar. It has, some also call it the heavy bottom because it's got this heavy bottom right here. Very cool ergonomics on this one. When you hold it like this, that little foot is purchased right there on your pinky. Very cool design in that particular regard. This one, I don't want to say that it's rougher, but it has a little bit different feel than this one here. I would say that the Flying Tip Bullet Wing is a little bit smoother for me personally, and a few other gentlemen that I spoke to would agree. If you'll notice, not to get too far off task, but there's lines that go parallel on this top cap here. We're going to revisit those lines in just a moment. That's a good view of them right there. I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Okay, now moving right along, we have another Micromatic. This is a Micromatic clog proof. They call it the clog proof because it literally says clog proof inside there, but it has these huge lather channels right here, okay? And you'll also notice it's a closed safety bar, and there are little nibs on this safety bar. And so if you'll notice, there is another one here, and they look almost identical to the untrained eye, but close the twist to open. If we sit and look very carefully, you'll notice that this one has 12 little nibs or bumps on the safety bar versus this one has 17, okay? The one with the 12 nibs on it is the first generation, made from 1941 to 1943. The second generation has 17 nibs on it and is made in start of 1945 and referred to as the Peerless. Now, it gets a little confusing with these because not only is there two versions of these, but there is also an open comb. If you notice the teeth here, vastly different, okay? This is also a Micromatic, but it can be very confusing when you're looking at them because they all have the same handle shape. The only difference is the open comb versus the closed comb, okay? They're much different, so let's go ahead and just talk about these for now. This is the clog proof and called the closed comb, okay? Of these two, they shave very, very similar. The 12 nib first generation, made in 1941 to 43, feels a little bit more blade exposure to me. I feel a little more blade when shaving with it. I would say that the 17 nib second generation, the Peerless as it's called, is a smoother shave and a little bit less blade feel for me. Efficiency wise, I don't really feel much of a gain with the more blade feel, so it's just personal preference. If you like more blade feel, go with the 12 nib. If you like a smoother, more forgiving shave with less blade feel, go with the second generation with the 17 nib, what's called the Peerless, okay? And if you look around, there are plated ones, but these ones are solid brass. So as you can see, this one I polished out a little bit more. This one could use a touch-up, but beautiful, you know, from being that these are 75 years old, give or take, they're in fantastic shape, and that's because they're all brass construction. So if you take a look at them and you see they're starting to patina or get those green coloring on them, that's usually an indication that they're brass and that they'll polish out very nicely. All right, moving along. Now we have the featherweight. So again, as I mentioned, some of these models have more than one variation. So as I mentioned before, I brought everyone's attention to the fact that this particular head design on the G-Bar has these parallel lines here on this little tab that you use to open the top cap, okay? The reason I bring that to everyone's attention is if you look at this cap or this one, you'll see there are no lines on the top cap here where this opening tab is here, okay? There's no parallel lines there. So what does that mean? This is the first generation of the featherweight. They call it the featherweight because it's very lightweight. It has this Bakelite handle, which is basically an old school plastic, and they're very, very light in weight, hence the name featherweight. This is the first generation because it has no parallel lines on it. This, in my opinion, is the one that you want. This is the mild yet very efficient and smooth shaving one. From what I understand, the second generation that has the lines, that's the second gen, the one with the lines, is not nearly as efficient. And so sometimes these featherweights get a bad rap by people trying them because unbeknownst to them, they get the second generation with the lines. My advice is get a first gen. And as you can see, they come in two different flavors. One's chrome and one is gold. The gold one has this little cool foot on the bottom. I don't recall ever seeing a chrome one with the foot on there, but that's also something to look out for. They both shave exactly the same as long as they're the same generation. And these ones are fantastic, very, very easy to use. And you might think like I did, boy, that handle sure kind of has a goofy shape. But when you're shaving with it, the ergonomics just fall totally into place, especially when you're doing against the grain, the way that that foot kind of reaches out there and the bend of it, it just naturally falls into just these awesome positions that you'll notice when you're shaving in a couple different directions. There'll be a couple times you're like, wow, the ergos on this handle are just next level. It just falls into that perfect positioning so many times as you're shaving with it. All right, so let's move along a little bit. I forgot to mention these two. So these two I would consider mild medium. I would say they fall, you know, kind of after the Flying Wing or the G-Bar. I would say in terms of overall blade feel and efficiency wise, these would be in the medium level here. This is a 1907 Gem Junior bar, okay? And they call it the bar because it has this flip down bail on it. It has little tiny stops here. You'll load the blade and it'll catch right on these little stops. You flip this down and then you push this and it has these little springs underneath. You can't really see them tweak down, but they put tension on the blade and it's called the Junior bar because it has this bar one. This is patented in 1901. There was earlier variations that lack this bar and have little metal ears here that fold in. Some of those require old school wedge blade. There is a seller on Etsy that makes a plastic replacement that you can put in there to enable them to use the common, more modern gem blades. This particular one with the bar will use both. It'll use the old school wedge style blade. It looks like a chopped off straight razor, or you can use just off-the-shelf gem blades. This one shaves fantastic. There's really, really cool, they call it a lather catcher because as you shave, the lather will build up in this lather channel, and I can usually do almost a whole entire with the grain or across the grain pass, the whole entire series of passes, shave my whole face before I have to rinse. The lather will just continuously build in this channel and not get clogged up. It's really quite an amazing shave. And as I mentioned, this one is so old that it can also double and use the wedge style blade that you would stick in there and put on your strop, and you would strop it so you could shave with it. So this one is the, you know, pretty much the original, and this is a very nice shave. This is that sweet spot of mild to medium for me and very smooth. This here is a Gem Junior. It looks very similar to the 1912 at a quick glance, but the heads are a little bit smaller on the Junior. This is a 1938. They call this the parade handle, or parade, and also called the baton handle because it looks like a little police baton, and it's the original, what they call Bakelite, or original plastic. And the ergos and shave experience with this is just awesome. When you're holding it, it has really great ergonomics, and that big fat chunky handle, it's nice and light, but it just feels great in the hand, and it's really, really ergo, and it just kind of falls right into all those sweet spots of your hand as you're shaving with it. I also like that it stands up by itself like that on its own. You don't need to stand on it underneath it to hold it up, so it's really cool in that regard. Also a solid brass head, so these polish out beautifully if you look around. There is also a Treat brand of these with a different closed comb bar here, but those ones are almost always plated from what I've seen, and usually quite beat up. But the Treat one comes with a little bit different closed comb here, and the handle you can find in this cool maroon color. But these are pretty rare in that maroon color to find without them being all beat up and not looking that great. So the gem version of these is usually in better shape because they're brass. All right, so we've covered all the smooth shaving middle ground ones. Now let's get into the aggressive arena. So this particular razor here, as I mentioned earlier, is considered the Micromatic, and this is when most people refer to a Micromatic, they're referring to the open comb one. So be cautious of that when you're looking at the listings online. You'll see, use the term Micromatic, but also put clog proof if that's what you want, but you'll also see both. So make sure you look to see if it has these open comb teeth. This is the more aggressive one. Of these particular two, believe it or not, most people claim that this is one of the most aggressive razors of all time, that even rivals or is on par to the Mühle R41 open comb. You know, as they say, your mileage may vary. I got this in an estate sale with a couple other razors, and I was very apprehensive to use it. Most close comb razors are a little bit much for me. And so, on a whim, I said, oh, what the heck, let me take a few passes with it. And if it's terrible, I'll just go ahead and set it down. Well, to my shocking surprise, I found that there is blade feel there. It is a razor that you have to be careful with and respect, but it was definitely not over the top and anything crazy like what I was expecting. And this 1912, in my opinion, is more aggressive for me. I'm pretty much a daily or every other day shaver. And for me personally, this 1912 with the long back, which is the most common one, it has this beautiful ornate chain link handle, as most gentlemen call it. It has the patent of 1912 on it, but these actually went into production 1919. The Micromatic started in production in 1930. The difference between these two is this is a twist to open, and this just uses the spring-loaded cap. Any that have this tab right here, they just simply open by opening it like that. You set the blade in there, and then it just closes back down, okay? So personal preferences, I personally find this one easier to shave with and easier to tame the blade, so to speak, whereas this one I really have to be careful with. It's just a little bit too aggressive for me. So personal preferences. Now, the beautiful thing about these gem razors is that, with the exception of this one here, because this is more of a collector's item because it's from 1907 and they're not as common, especially in this kind of shape, for the most part, other than this one, every single one of these beautiful razors can be had for under $25. And honestly, you can get most of these shipped to your door with shipping tax out the door and everything for, on average, $15. You can pretty much get any of these for $20 to your door. And as I mentioned, you're talking these razors, this razor is from 1919, and look at the beautiful shape that it's in. What can you buy these days that holds the test of time like that? And just, fantastic, cool retro styling and vintage antique looks. This is from the 30s. Look at the shape that it's in. I mildly had to polish and take care of, most of these to bring them back to, nearly their original shape. Again, 1938. Look at the shape of this beautiful piece. So, if nothing else, I'll admit that while not all of these are my favorites, I wanted to address that, they're so cool that I pretty much keep all of them around. So for my personal favorites, shave-wise, out of the series, it would be a toss-up between the Clog Proof with the 17 nibs, the Peerless, as I mentioned, the second generation that's made 1945, versus the Featherweight. The Featherweight, I love both colors. I loved it so much I had this gold one first that I just wanted to be spoiled brat and get the chrome one. They both shave exactly the same. For me, I would say it's really a toss-up as to which I enjoy better. Looks and solid-wise, I love the heft and the feel of this. I think the twist to open is cool, especially when you consider how old it is, that the twist to open still works great. But ergonomics and shave experience-wise, I think the Featherweight is my favorite. I find it that perfect Goldilocks of very mild blade feel, smooth shaving, and most importantly, it has the efficiency. These two, in my opinion, are that Goldilocks blend of great efficiency and smooth, but they definitely seem to bring the efficiency very, very close to the legendary open comb, but without the babysitting and the super careful strokes, especially if you have a pronounced jawline or an Adam's apple that sticks out. You definitely have to be careful with this one. Whereas these are just a tad below in efficiency, but shave experience and forgiving wise, these ones are great. I love both of these. They're fantastic. I really think you can't go wrong, and that's my advice to somebody. Unless you're looking for something super mild, then I would go into either a push button, a flying tip bullet wing, or the G-Bar. If you want the aggressive beasts of the series, I would definitely say you can't go wrong with either one of these. Just depends on what do you like. Do you like the fancy ornate handle? Do you want all brass? These, if I'm not mistaken, the Micromatic Open Comb only came in the plated. I don't know that you can find them in brass, but I could be mistaken on that. So it just depends. Do you like the twist to open? You know, what style do you like? Can't go wrong with either. Fantastic razors. You know, these all started in 1898 under the Gem brand. There are Everready or Star that makes some similar ones, but not to get too much of a tangent, I just wanted to cover all the Gem ones. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to try any of these, and you know, for the money, you really can't go wrong. If nothing else, they're so cool and unique looking. I think that you know, they really complete anybody's collection. And if you get into something like this, you know, pretty much anybody, even if they're not a shave enthusiast, is bound to ask, wow, what is that on your counter? Look at how cool and unique that is. You don't see something like that. And when you consider this razor is made in 1907, that, you know, look at the shape that it's in. When they say they don't build things like they used to, boy, they aren't lying. Well, thanks for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed the not so brief intro to Gem razors, and check out my personal channel, Stubble Meets Steel again. I do an even more in-depth razor breakdown of Gem, and I go into the history of not only Gem, but Gillette. So check that out if you're interested and you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Take care.